Let us say the prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily argue with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So I'll have to begin by saying Purnananda, good evening, and Guru Mahagut for being here with me. And the reason why, of course, I'm giving you a greeting in Irish, which I should be doing all the time, is because tonight is a very special evening. It is actually Saint Brigid's Eve, and traditionally the saint that is also a goddess, we have to bear in mind two things, visits virtuous households and blesses all those people, the inhabitants. And as Brigid represents the light half of the whole year, because it represents spring and the power that will bring people from the dark season of winter into spring, then her presence was and is vital at this time of year. Now, I suppose this festival is also called Imbolc, which is a very ancient spring festival. And the word itself is derived from the Irish for ewe, EWE, that means lambs, lambing, and so on. And really, I suppose, should be seasonally, well, it's in between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, something like that. It's a season, it's a remembrance of entering into spring from the darkness of winter. So it reminds me of a verse, actually, in the Bhagavad Gita. The 10th chapter will tell us. See, there's Mashanam Magashirsoham Ritunam Kusham Karaha. That is, of all the months, says Krishna, I am the month of Margashirsha, and of all the seasons, there I am not just the spring, but I am the flowery spring when flowers come, and snowdrop flowers are the indication of spring. So for years and years and years, probably thousands and thousands of years, there has been a celebration, the kind of agricultural festival, it's how most of these begin, around this goddess, Brigid. And this goddess was the goddess of protection against fire. It's also the one that lends itself to poetry. We may see that it's something like Saraswati in the Hindu tradition, or concept, but it is also more, not only poetry, but also agriculture, protection. All of these qualities come to this great goddess. And of course, when Christianity comes along, this gets merged, syncretized with the saint Brigid also. So this evening, I wanted to say a little bit about this festival, Imbolc, and this festival also of St. Brigid's Day, because tomorrow is a public holiday in the Republic of Ireland. That has been so since last year. But St. Brigid is really the patroness of the whole of Ireland. She's Ireland's patroness saint, and I think very appropriate in an age where we're giving much more credence, much more value to women, because all along it's been St. Patrick as the patron saint of Ireland. But despite that, of course, the St. Brigid has been there traditionally. On an eve like this, just to tell you about some of the festivals, of course, we all know about the weaving of Brigid's crosses. So some rushes are taken, some bulrushes are taken, and very, very beautifully and cleverly woven in. And these Brigid's crosses, which are not like a straight vertical and horizontal cross. In fact, I think if you look at it carefully, they resemble the swastika sign, not which is associated with the sun, basically, and with the turn of seasons, the turn of ages. And so we can see a synergy there. But these crosses are wonderfully made in every household, and they are hung at the door, and the old one from the previous year is removed. And this cross is a protection against fire. I really hope that we have one hanging in a Nivedita house. I'm not there at the moment, but we certainly every year we put, and I hope one is hanging there now. So it is the lambing season, and therefore it is the season where we worship the spring in a feminine form as the goddess. And the goddess spring is really said to visit your home tonight on St. Brigid's Eve. Very, very reminiscent of the beginning of Durga Puja, that period of time where the goddess comes from her mountain home and stays in your home. And this is taken quite seriously because she is the protector against fire, illness, and all evil kinds of influences or forces. And so to receive her blessings, people would actually make a bed for Brigid, leave her food and drink, set items of clothing outside for her to bless, and holy wells. Holy wells are visited, and we have our own ladies' well, holy well, nearby our Nivedita house. And so it would be good for those in Dublin to visit that holy well, which is Mary's well, Lady's well, dedicated to Our Lady, which really, again, when we say Our Lady, when we say even Durga, when we cross cultures like this, really, it is the same energy, same universal energy presented in all these different forms. And they're all feminine. After all, if you play a game of chess, it's the queen that moves all over the board. And the male king just sits there. And so this idea of this Shakti, this energy being feminine, goes way back to the Vedic times, where Vak is really emanating from Brahma. Brahma we call the creator, but Brahma is not really a creator. Brahma's emanation, first movement, is Vak, that is word, which we know, of course, as Om. That first vibration in the beginning was the word. We can see how this is Logos. So you'll see from varying traditions, we find all these similarities coming about, these interchanges of truth and valid concepts that give us a better understanding of the universe. So if you feel like her blessings, then tonight leave her food and drink. Items of clothing can be left outside for her to bless. Holy wells can be visited. A special meal can be had. And of course, this is linked to the transition or the preparation for spring. Just for your interest, there are a few passage tombs in Ireland that are aligned with the sunrise around the times of these two seasons. There are 4 festivals, but Imbolc and Samhain. Samhain is what you popularly probably more identified as Halloween. And so if you ever visit the hill of Tara, which is really a wonderful place to visit, most tourists come and visit it. It includes what is called the Mound of the Hostages on that hill. And you'll see that this also is in alignment with this sunrise scheduled really for this Imbolc. And this alignment is so rare, it's not really a product of chance, is what people have established. So this festival, of course, is so important that it gets aligned subsequently with this mother saint of Ireland, which is Saint Brigid. And we know that Saint Brigid lived around about the 5th century. And so we see her, probably her life is what, 451 of this current era to 525. She is our mother saint, along with 2 other national saints. You're familiar with Patrick, but the other one is Columba. Now, St. Brigid really was the daughter of a chieftain and a slave woman. And she was raised in a Druid's household before becoming a consecrated nun. So she's the patroness of many things which are carried over from the goddess, including poetry, learning, healing, protection, blacksmithing, livestock, dairy production, and so on. And in her honor, a perpetual fire was kept in Kildare, burning for centuries. You can say she identifies with the Celtic goddess, but it doesn't really mean very much to us, because a saint that is close to God is God himself, because we see God reflected in these ideals of perfection. So we don't really mind if Brigid is associated with the goddess. From last year, as I mentioned, there's been a public holiday, as we should surely have. And of course, Brigid is famous in Kildare, called Brigid of Kildare, because it was in Kildare that Brigid built an original abbey. And she established a monastic tradition, unusually, that had monks and nuns, both monks and nuns, rather than these 2 traditions separate. So it is said that Dubtach's wife forced him to sell Brigid's mother to a druid when she became pregnant. And so, according to an 8th century account, Brigid's origins were like that. And Brigid's druid stepfather actually is portrayed in a somewhat sympathetic way, but we see that this ideal of Brigid goes way back to Druid times, Celtic times. There are many stories about her performing miracles, including healing, feeding the poor. According to one tale, as a child, she once gave away her mother's entire store of butter. And the butter was then replenished in answer to Brigid's prayers. And around the age of 10, she was returned as a household servant to her father. And she was well known for her charity, because she donated her belongings, all her belongings, to anyone who asked. This is a wonderful sign. We see this in the lives of many saints, this spirit of generosity. But it became a little bit too much because her father, Dubtach, was extremely annoyed when Brigid took her, when he took her in a chariot to the King of Leinster to sell her, because she gave her father's bejeweled sword away to a beggar to barter it for food to feed his family. That is the beggar's family. And the king, of course, recognized her holiness and convinced her father to grant his daughter freedom. We then see Brigid in her holiness as a consecrated nun, dedicated nun, and according to tradition, around about, let's say, 480, it was Brigid who founded this monastery at Kildare. And the monastery was actually on the site of a previous shrine which was there to the Celtic goddess Brigid. And this is where the two tales tie in together. She was served by a group of young women who tended an eternal flame. And this site was under a large oak tree on a certain ridge. Initially, Brigid had a group of about 7 companions. And so together, they organized this community of religious life. And she founded 2 monasteries, actually. And one was for men, one was for women eventually. And she became the first abbess of Kildare. She invited the hermit from Cornell to help her in this endeavor. And this person became the first bishop of Kildare. She gave canonical jurisdiction to this person. She selected the person and gave the jurisdiction. You can see then how powerful she was and influential, not just for her saintliness, but her authority as an abbess. So she was regarded as a kind of superior general, if you like, of the center there in Kildare, which of course became a site of learning. And of course, we know it developed into a cathedral city. She also founded a school of art, including metalwork, and made a scriptorium, which delivered the Book of Kildare. And this book drew high praise from many people far and wide. Of course, it all disappeared during the Reformation, did a lot of damage to all these things. And even I think her relics were taken from Downpatrick, and eventually ended up, you'll be pleased to know, Ophelia in Portugal. So that's a little bit about Imbolc and the life of Saint Brigid. We may doubt, of course, the historicity of her, and we may doubt the validity of her miracles, but the fact is that something must have been there. When Swami Vivekananda produced the doubts about the historical existence of Rama, Krishna, and so on, Ramakrishna's simple answer was, something must have been there to last thousands and thousands of years. And so when we find legends coming up, there must be some level of truth that had an impact. No doubt embellishments went on, so that by, let's say, the 16th century, 17th century, we have full-blown stories of miracles all over the place. One of the most well-known of these stories is of Brigid asking the King of Leinster for land. And she told the king that the place where she stood was the perfect spot for a convent. It was beside a forest where they could gather firewood and berries. There was a lake nearby that would provide water, and the land was fertile. Anyway, it turns out the king laughed at her and refused to give her any land. And so Brigid prayed sincerely and asked God to soften the king's heart. And then she smiled at the king and said, "Will you give me as much land as my cloak will cover?" And the king thought that she was joking, and he agreed. And she told 4 of her sisters to take up the cloak. But instead of laying it flat on the turf, each sister, with their face turned to a different point of the compass, began to run swiftly, and the cloak grew in all directions and covered many acres of land. And then, of course, the king was frightened and said, "Well, or rather, my cloak is about covering your whole province to punish you for your stinginess for the poor, she says. He begged her, please call your maidens back. I'll give you a decent plot of land. And the saint was persuaded. And if the king held his purse strings tight in the future, she had only to allude to her cloak to bring him to reason. And we are reminded, of course, of the story of the incarnation of Vishnu as a dwarf who, in 3 steps, using the king's head as one of them, covered the entire of existence. Anyway, whether we believe all these stories or not, the fact is that Brigid has stood out, firstly, as a pioneer, as a woman of immense holiness. And holiness can generate many unusual phenomena. Because once you're holy, in the yogic language, you have control of all the energy of the universe. It's called pranayama. There are also, we find a revolutionary in her, whereby she stood by her principles. And we see that she was an abbess, somebody of tremendous influence in Ireland. You know, in those days, Celtic Christianity was different. It wasn't the bishops or what have you that had the authority. It was the abbots and abbesses. We can link the 2 things, that is the goddess to the saint, and bear in mind both without any sense of contradiction. So with that, I wish you happy what we call Biddy's Day or Biddy's Festival for tomorrow. There may be many parades and many different events going on to celebrate this. But you see, these events are worth reflecting on and contemplating, particularly the fact of the season. We have to use every opportunity we can to align the mind toward the glory of the divine at any moment. And seasons are a perfect opportunity. You know, in Zimbabwe, we only have 2 seasons. And in some places, in the lowlands, we have 2 seasons, summer and hell, because it's so hot. But generally, we only have 2 seasons, dry season and rainy season. And when I came to Ireland, it was a great delight to see these 4 seasons turning. In India, of course, you have 5 seasons. The monsoon season is also there. But to see the difference and changes. If we have a poetic imagination, we can think that it is the divine mother of the universe changing her clothing. In autumn, the clothing is soft browns, autumn colors. In spring, it is lively colors. In summer, sunny colors. In winter, the pure white of snow. So we see all these different seasons, and they all become an opportunity for us to delight in the divine. And we have to bear in mind also that of all the seasons, Krishna says, I am the spring that produces flowers. And of course, in next month, that is, I would say March, or end of, certainly March anyway, end of March, there is the Easter, which is the full-blown spring festival, if you will. So this is the beginning of it, we would think. Anyway, of course, we know that here in Europe, that February is also a kind of wintry season, but it gives us the hope. And when we see the sunrise, even in the winter months, where the sky is absolutely blue, in my experience here in Ireland and in Europe in general, it is a beautiful sight to see the crystal blue sky, even in the cold, and the most magnificent sunrises. Sunrise representing fire, representing hope, representing life. And this then can put us in a beautifully meditative mood and assist us nicely in steering our attention toward the glory of the immortal self, or what religion calls God. So I'm aware that this is a short talk. That's good because my voice is a little shaky. So if you want to follow the traditions this evening, it would be quite a nice thing to do, particularly if you're in Ireland. And if you want to make a Brigid's Cross, go in the early morning. You know, last year some devotees went up into the Wicklow Mountains and collected fresh rushes and wove them together. And I think once in the ashram we had a Brigid's Cross day where we weave these crosses in a peculiar fashion. They can be either four-legged or some will be three-legged as a variety. And then you hang them up over a door, every door. And if you have an imagination, you can prepare food for the coming of the Mother Goddess in whatever form you choose. And then, of course, tomorrow, please enjoy Biddy's Day or Biddy's Festival, St. Brigid's Day.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Very good. Okay. So anyway, Guru Mahagat.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Radhay Urt, the grace of God on you, and Benacht blessings.
Guru Mahagat, Swamiji. Slongafol.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.